Most of us won't remember, but this gospel was actually the gospel that happened November 30th of 2023, just a year ago, right? So it's kind of interesting. We're almost near the end of the liturgical season, right? Advent starts the very first Sunday the liturgical year starts the very first Sunday of Advent, which is December 1st. This was the last gospel, the first gospel of the first Sunday of Advent of this year. So kind of interesting that the church almost has bookended this liturgical year with the Gospel of Mark in chapter 13. So before we get into this, it's a bit of a unique situation. What we have today is this is called apocalyptic literature, and we heard it in the book of Daniel. Elizabeth did a great job with that. You know, it's like you almost think that the dude is high because you're talking, it's going to come on the clouds, and you're going to see this and seven-headed animals and all this kind of stuff. It's all over the place, right? And it's pretty symbolic imagery, and you get a lot of it. Daniel has a lot of it, and the Gospel of Mark, chapter 13 only, has a lot of it. So, just as a little bit of background, chapter 13 of the Gospel of Mark marks the shortest Gospel, and this is what we've been hearing almost all year. The shortest Gospel, the earliest Gospel that's written, and chapter 13 they call it the little apocalypse. The big apocalypse is in Revelation, but the little apocalypse is in the Gospel of Mark. Chapter 13 is actually, most scripture scholars say, it's actually two stories that the author of Mark had, and they're two apocalyptic stories, and they were actually a little bit conflicting, and they wove them together to make chapter 13. And it's actually a little crazy because a lot of it doesn't make sense. One sentence will make sense, and then the next sentence seems to be exactly opposite, like, the time is near, don't worry. It's like, well, what do you mean? The time is here, no, don't worry. Actually, if you pull this gospel apart, it's almost like you take one verse and take verse 1 and verse 2. One verse is to one story and the other one's to that. So if you pull it apart, you actually get the two stories that are really consistent with each other, but they're woven together. So what we got is a mess. Okay, we have a gospel mess. That's okay, because what I think it does is it opens up for us a lot of doors. Because apocalyptic literature, believe it or not, apocalyptic literature this is the purpose. The primary purpose is to offer comfort and hope to believers who are facing persecution, hardship, by presenting visions of a future and end time. Now, I don't know about you, but when I hear apocalyptic literature, I don't necessarily think of hope. And I don't necessarily think of visions of the end of time. Well, I sometimes do, but it doesn't really do that for me. And I don't think it does it for most of us today in the world. Apocalyptic literature almost has taken on this sense of foreboding, right? It's like, oh man, the end of times, and we're going to go out to the four winds and collect everybody, and we're going to come back. But if apocalyptic literature is meant to lift us up, then we have to understand it a little bit more. So apocalyptic literature has symbolic language. It has a focus on the end of times, and it's meant to comfort and encourage us. And it often depicts some kind of cosmic battle. There's usually somebody's going to fight somebody about evil and good. That's usually what it does. And it's often used in history. It's often used in times of extreme persecution. So when I was being persecuted, not me personally, but the community was being persecuted, they couldn't say like Nero, the Roman emperor, is beating us up, and this is how we're going to overthrow him. They had to use language that Nero didn't understand, that they were talking about Nero. So they used apocalyptic literature and apocalyptic language, and they called him the seven-headed beast. Well, you can't throw me in jail because I said a seven-headed beast is going to come on the clouds, That's your own fault. So that's what that literature, and it's meant to actually lift us up and help us out. But that proclamation in today's world doesn't make a lot of sense, and it doesn't often do it for us. So I think we need to dig into the gospel a little bit, right? So we know what the historical and kind of literary context is, but let's look at what's really going on. So if you take a step back, a 30,000-foot view, as Cassie and I were often say, 30,000-foot view, and you look at this in the context of the Gospel of Mark, what Mark is trying to do is not to worry about whether people are focused on the end of times. What Mark is trying to do is actually say, there's a challenge that we live as Christians in this world today. And that challenge is to live as if the end is going to come at any minute. You know? Because it hadn't, right? Jesus had died. He came back. He appeared at the tomb. You know, he said, go do this. And they were thinking that the end was coming, and it wasn't coming. And it's like, what do we do? Mark says, you know what you do? You live every day as if this could be the end. And that's how to live the Christian life. I believe, actually, that the second coming, in our belief in that, ought not to be just some simple doctrine that we subscribe to, like we mentioned it in our creed, but it should be the defining reality of our lives. And that can be really hard. And most of us can't really grab it, right? To actually make that reality how we live our lives is nearly impossible. And I thought for many years that it was. I thought, you can't do this, you know? Otherwise you end up being fatalistic, like, oh my God, I'm going to die tomorrow, right? And it's like, no, I can't live like that. And I don't think that's what Mark is asking us to do. I think Mark is asking us to actually think about how and what we're doing today. Most Christians often think, well, since the end time is unknown, it could be 100 years or 1,000,000 years from now, right? Whatever. I don't know when it's going to happen. But Mark says, since the time is unknown, it could be today, right? So rather than saying it could be 1,000,000 years, he's saying, yeah, but it could be today. So how do you live it today? How do we do it today? I used to think that was impossible. And I actually really struggled with it in my faith journey. I really struggled with how to live every day as if it could be the last or as if Jesus might come again. Because I do believe that Jesus will come again. And then, I of all the places that you wouldn't expect, I learned how to do it. I think somewhat. I don't do it perfectly. I'm not even close to perfect. But I went to prison, right? And in prison is where I learned how to live this. Which is, I think it's crazy. I really think it's crazy that I had to go to prison to learn how to live every day as if it's the last. Now I know I worked there. I wasn't a member, but I did learn from those incarcerated men and women and from the officers that I worked with what it means to live every day and every moment that Mark is inviting us to live. Believe it or not, it was inside the prison walls where I learned to listen in a way that I never did before I went there. I learned to appreciate every gesture of kindness, every gesture of honesty, and every gesture of compassion and empathy in a way that I never did before I walked through those doors. You see, my friends, when you live in an environment or when you are working or walking in an environment, when every breath, every friendship, every meal, every moment could actually be your last, you begin to experience life differently, right? And I think of our brothers and sisters who are stuck in war zones, you know, Israel and Gaza and all that. And if you woke up every day and you didn't know if really the bomb was going to fly, you know, and end your life, you really walk it differently. So it's really kind of a unique situation when you walk out of prison and we used to call them offenders. They're not offenders. The incarcerated person will say, you know, chap, can I give you a hug? Or they give you a hug, and it's like, this could be the last time I ever see you. Could be the last time. because I might not be here and you might not be here. And it's so authentic, How to live that authenticity becomes so drastically important. And empathy becomes almost an armor that we wear. And integrity becomes more than just a word, it becomes a way of living. I think if we want to learn how to live every moment as if it could be our last, we have to do that. All we have to do that is to live our lives as fully as we possibly could, right? My suggestions for living, I think after reflecting on this homily, are just three in number. I would suggest that we try to leave no thing, not nothing, but no thing, right? Leave no thing that can make this world a better place unsaid, right? So if you have an option to say something that's going to make this world a better place, don't wait. Say it. Do it. Whatever it is. Write the thank you note. Offer the gesture of promise of hope to someone. Do something that makes this world a better place. Number 2, don't waste your energy worrying about or doing things that aren't worth it. There's a ton of things that I have found in my life. I pray the serenity prayer all the time. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I can't change, the courage to change the things, the wisdom to know the difference. I don't do good on wisdom, right? I get all that mixed up, and I waste a lot of energy trying to change something that I can't change. And then number 3, entertain no thought that's worth your time unless it's for your betterment or the betterment of the world. So if it's not going to make you better, not going to bring you more peace, not going to bring you more happiness, just let it go. In AA, we say, let go and let God. Just let it go. Because it's really not worth your time, and it's not worth your energy to continue to try to live it. I took the liberty while I was prepping for this homily to ask AI what it meant to live life to the fullest. And it was kind of interesting because I had those 3, and AI came up with this, and I'm going to invite Paul to thank you. This is what AI came up with. It said, be present, embrace experience. This is living life to the fullest. Be present, embrace experiences, find joy in the small things, follow your passions, and live without regrets. So I was pretty close on my 3, I think, at least close to AI. Live without regrets. I think the fundamental question of this chapter of Mark for us is this. What have we done today to live our lives to the fullest? What have we done? Living life to the fullest means believing that each and every one of us are children of God, that we're worthy of having a beautiful life and embracing every moment, finding joy in the simple things, and making the most of our time here on earth. Living our gospel values is really about seeking experiences that bring us fulfillment and happiness. Living life to the fullest is a personal journey that's unique to each and every one of us, but it has a focus for the common good. It's about learning and listening and defining what brings us joy and pursuing it with a passion that does no harm to others or to our planet. It rarely means acquiring more things. It is, as the gospel writer of Mark reminds us, a precursor of the fact that heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words, God said, my words will never pass away. So my belief and my suggestion is this, that we walk out of this liturgy today with our heads held high, breathing in deeply the peace of God, celebrating the fact that we make a difference in this world with every step, every greeting, and every breath. If I learned anything from my time in prison, it's this. That choice, my friends, that choice to live each and every day is ours.